Next up is Voices of Change with your hosts, Leslie Acosta and Aissia Richardson. Voices of Change is to connect, inform, and empower people to engage in social political change. Right here on USALA Radio. World news, local politics, saving money and investing, all this and more right here on USALA Radio. Your voice, your radio.
Joining us. You are listening to Voices of Change on USALA Radio with your hosts, Aissia Richardson and Leslie Acosta. Aissia, we're going to have an interesting conversation today about the blue tsunami in Philadelphia.
It certainly was
It was a tsunami. I think, it's a lot to discuss today, a lot to unpack as to what happened. But I really feel two things. One, voters are just, they're in tune and they're involved and they want change. And two, there's a Trump effect that I think had an enormous effect on the turnout November the 5th. What say you?
So I agree. I think that we saw certainly in Pennsylvania a shifting of the winds, of the political winds, and across the country we did too. So we saw Kentucky and Virginia and these states across the country that are just deciding that on their higher level politics and on their the legislature, they're changing over. So Virginia has completely turned blue.
Right.
So I think that folks are. I think that the Republicans would like to say that there's malaise associated with this impeachment inquiry, but I think what the impeachment inquiry is showing is that it's peeling back the curtain in terms of the things that have been going on that include corruption and bribery. So folks don't want their government to look like a third world country. I'm sorry. I just have to say it, like that we don't want corruption in our government. And I think that folks tolerate a certain amount of how to navigate the system. But in terms of like straight out, it's just corruption, that's a problem.
Well, Trump ran on this idea of, the swamp. He talked about the swamp. He talked about getting rid of the swamp. And he is the one bringing the swamp to Washington,
totally
right?
Did.
So totally. And you see the hypocrisy, talking out of both sides of his mouth, not being straightforward with the public. All those things had an enormous effect on these local races here in Philadelphia.
Right.
And we're going to talk about that. Locally, Democrats, they will hold 5 seats, right? So all 5 seats will be held. On the Delaware County Council seat, that was a very interesting race because Republicans, they had a stronghold on that seat since the Civil War.
Yeah.
And so now in Bucks County,
Right.
Democrats captured the Board of Commissioners for the first time since 1983.
Right.
So we see this shift in our politics that is, to me, amazing. And I think that has to do with what we talked about when we opened this segment.
Right.
People are engaged and they want change.
And part of this also has to do with the things that we've been talking about for years, which includes criminal justice reform.
Right.
So in Delaware County, we had someone who was the head of a private prison, and in Delaware County, who was the brother of the head of the Republican Party in Delaware County. John Riley was the superintendent of the Delaware County Prison and had been accused of racism and sexism and creating this incredible hostile environment. Also, look at the people who were there, Black and brown bodies. A lot of the people who are there are from the universities, are from our students who go to school at Lincoln University, and they're getting picked up and then they're getting put into the prison because once these private prisons are built, they have to be filled.
They have to be filled, and that's a money-making
Exactly.
business, and you and I know that. In Philadelphia, a third-party insurgent candidate weakened, Aissia, an already marginalized GOP by securing one of the at-large seats for city council, which is reserved, as you know, for many years for a minority party. And that seat has been held that way for 70 years.
Yes.
And it went to Kendra Brooks,
Yes.
who ran on the Working Family
Families
Party.
Yes.
And she did an amazing job. She
Right.
was backed, though. She was backed by progressive groups, even by Elizabeth Warren.
But she was also backed by the low-wage worker union. And so that union sort of sent a message to the bigger unions, to the electrical union, to the carpenters union, to say, hey, we're going to be players in this as well.
Right.
Yeah.
However, outside of Pennsylvania, we have voters, they felt their unrest with President Trump and the Republican Party. We see that occurred on November the 5th. It helped deliver victories for Democrats, even in Kentucky. For the first time, we have a Democratic governor there. They took the governorship, and in Virginia, where they seized a complete control of the state house there, of the government for the first time, then in more than a quarter century there.
Exactly.
So that you can tell that blue wave is definitely, or that tsunami, as we're calling it.
Yes.
The title of this show is The Blue Tsunami. Has not only has had an impact here locally, but nationally as well. But let's talk about our local races here, Aissia.
Yes.
Voters, they turned on Republicans.
Yes,
on their own Republican Party, they turned on the establishment of the party, of the Democrats.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah. I mean,
in a way, they did that, right? In races from Philadelphia, and let's talk about, and even in Scranton. We'll get to that in a minute. To the suburbs of Delaware and Chester counties, voters made their feelings known on a number of key offices and ballot questions, bringing the fresh-faced newcomers as well as keeping around longtime members of the Philadelphia political machine. Bob Brady was not too happy about this. He was very upset at the fact that, we got more progressive. Well, the city council is more leaning left.
Yeah, exactly.
Progressively left.
Yes.
I don't think he's too happy about that.
Well, I mean, I think part of this is about control, right? And so the issue had to do with the elected officials who were part of the Democratic Party supporting someone who was not part of the party machine, right? So, there have been several candidates that have run in opposition to the Democratic Party. Maria Quinones is one.
Yeah.
She never gets endorsed by the party. And so with Helen Jim, Chris Rabb, Malcolm Kenyatta, several of the elected officials, the progressive elected officials, supported that third party candidate. And I think that was a statement to say, hey, the values of the Democratic Party need to be honored, such as making sure that people have access to fair wage jobs.
Well, he's not happy with that. He wants people to go with what the party or the endorsed candidates of the party. And, that's politics, right? So he was not happy about the outcome of certain races and how if you are part of the political machine, you have to be part of the candidates that we endorse. But we saw people went and did their own thing.
Right, because it's about the voice of the people, right? I mean, if we're a party that honors people and we're a party that gets out and registers people to vote, then we should honor their choices.
Well, we see across Pennsylvania, there has been an influx of candidates that look different. They look different.
Yes.
They're not your typical political candidates. More women are involved. More people of color are involved. And more members of the LGBTQ community with a message that resonated with the voters in this election.
Exactly.
All three of the winners for Delaware County Council were women. All three of them.
Yes.
And as were several of the winners in Chester and Bucks County, and one was black. So that was historic in itself. Let's talk about the two black women that won in Chester County. For sheriff, you have Freda Maddox. She was here. She gave us an interview. She won that decisively in Chester County. And we have Rochelle Bilal. We're going to be interviewing her here on January the 18th.
Excellent.
And we're going to be talking about her win and what is her vision and goal for that seat. So we see more women of color into these positions and to these seats, and I'm very proud of that. As a female, and I am proud of that, Aissia.
Well, I mean, the part of this is like you cannot underestimate the amount of women of color who have been fighting for their children, who have been fighting against their children being shot in the back, their children being lost to the criminal justice system. So women of color have really been on the forefront of criminal justice reform. You see Moms Demand Action as the face, but the real workers, the real voters, the people who come out in force and support the actual policy are women of color. And now we're coming into the forefront.
Oh, we're coming into that forefront. We are seeing a sustained movement throughout this country. Here in Philly politics, a sustained change in who is participating in our democracy. We are expanding the definition of what a leader looks like. It's not your typical leader. And, we are changing the dynamics of politics in Philadelphia, and I am so proud of that. I'm proud of that wave. So this sea change that we're seeing accounts for that blue tsunami, not only in Philadelphia, in the suburbs, but even in our national politics. That's just the bottom line, Aissia.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, I think that there's more to come. This is just the beginning. Look at the city council. We have 5 seats that now we have one new face on that city council seat. We have 2 new faces in the district council seats with the win of Jamie
Gauthier.
And then the win of Gilmore.
Right, Catherine Gilmore.
She's right.
Right, so that's two new women and Kendra Brooks, 3 new women, Black women on city council, and then we have Isaiah Thomas, who also won a seat.
That's right. That's a new face.
Large. Yeah.
Right,
so we got several new faces on city council, which I think that these folks, they bring a wealth of information, a wealth of knowledge about issues in Philadelphia that deal with the municipal government as well as education.
Right. And, these 5 seats historically have been won by Democrats. But 2 seats were always set aside for a minority party, which was held for 70 years by a Republican.
Right.
That one was won by Kendra Brooks.
Right.
So we've seen several progressive third-party candidates that challenged the Republican incumbent, and these 2 seats which shifted the council seat dramatically towards the left. I don't know, Aissia. This stuff that's happening here locally, we know that there was a blue tsunami. There's a Trump effect to that. Let's see if that translates into the national politics, and in 2020, whether or not President Donald Trump will get reelected. We don't know that yet. We don't know if Pennsylvania will go in his direction.
Yeah.
There's a lot of dynamics in play.
Yeah.
The local politics is a testament to what the dissatisfaction of the people. What's happening locally also can translate what's happening nationally. But we don't know because, Pennsylvania is very conservative. When you get to Philadelphia, it's very progressive. When you get to the Pittsburgh, Allegheny County, they're very also progressive. When you get into the middle of Pennsylvania, that's a more conservative voter bloc that we have to consider and take into effect. Yeah. And we don't know how that's going to pan out.
Well, I think that part of the issue in Philadelphia, I think can be demonstrated on a national level, which is the case of David O. So David O ran as a Republican, but he was running against his party because his party actually didn't want him to win. They put up another candidate against him, and so David O., who is for reforms to the Department of Human Services and is for giving the parking authority back to the city, was, he was repudiated by his party. Yeah. But he went out and he reached out, and Democrats voted for him. So the thing about Bob Brady is that while folks supported Kendra Brooks, they also supported David O. So if you're going to challenge folks around their endorsements or around who they voted for, then you have to treat both candidates equally.
Well, that doesn't happen here, and that's the way city politics occurs. And, David O's party election, or, the day that he won, it had kind of like a funeral vibe because they lost that one seat. Right. The Republican Party was not happy about that.
Well, they weren't happy, which is the reason why Martina White is now the head of the GOP.
She just got elected. Right, Martina White. In fact, we're waiting for an interview here at USALA. Mm-hmm. She's supposed to be coming here to give us an interview as to, her becoming the new head of the Republican Party. Yeah. But we have to take a short break. We'll be right back, and we'll continue to have this discussion. You're listening to Voices of Change on USALA Radio.
Don't wait. Communicate. Make your emergency plan today.
Because of you, I feel not alone in this world. And you let me know that it only takes one person to make you feel wanted.
Welcome back. You are listening to Voices of Change on Usula Radio with your hosts, Aissia Richardson and Leslie Acosta. We are talking about the blue tsunami that occurred November the 5th. Aissia Richardson, it is impressive winds, not only here locally, but also in our different counties. Let's talk about the Delaware County Council seat, also changed.
Yes.
In an historic election, voters, they chose 3 Democrats to join the Delaware County Council, shutting out Republicans and decisively switching the composition of a county government that the GOP controlled since the Civil War. That was
Since the Civil War.
Since the Civil War, exactly right. You heard that correctly. The Democrats, they campaigned on a platform of transparency and changing, vowing to bring an end to the 150 years of the one-party control rule in that county, which they said led to mismanagement, sweetheart deals,
Yes,
with a lot of corruption and higher taxes, fewer services than their suburban counterparts. Democrats hammered on the fact that the Delaware County pays higher taxes than neighboring suburban counties,
Exactly.
26% higher.
Yeah.
So how that disparity, I don't understand how all that occurred. 26% higher than in Chester County, 35% higher than in Bucks County, 81% higher than in Montgomery County. Well, what the hell's going on in that?
And they got to pay for their prison, their private prison.
But receives fewer services. Let's talk about the reform of the prison. You mentioned this earlier in our opening remarks. They've pushed for prison reform there on that platform that they ran. The county's George Hill Correctional Facility, that's what it's called.
Right.
The George W. Hill Correctional Facility is the only privately run prison in that state and has been the source of controversy regarding the staff shortages, the inmates' death. There's been a lot of death reported.
A lot of suicides.
And suicide in that prison.
Just an incredible amount of suicides.
Right.
Yeah.
Candidates have objected not only to its for-profit model, but also to the makeup of the prison board, whose members are not elected. No. How do you have people on a prison board and they're not elected to that position? Only in that county that happens.
Exactly.
Right? So they ran on that platform. And the races for Chester County Council seat also went to the Democrats. And in Bucks County, Democrats took control of the county government for the first time in 40 years, winning a majority control of the Board of Commissioners and 4 open county row offices. In Philadelphia, we mentioned Bob Brady, who chairs the Democratic City Committee. Mm-hmm. What's up, Bob? Guess what he said? He was very upset. He has insinuated that committee members and war leaders, listen up, Carlos Matos and all those folks part of the party, who push non-Democrats in election could be expelled from the committee after Tuesday. Now, are we running a mafia-style party system here, a committee where you're going to be expelled for not going with the wishes of the party? Are you kidding me?
How you going to replace 67 ward leaders?
Aisha, I don't know. This doesn't sound... What's going on here, Aisha?
I think that part of that is that, we're coming into a really important election next year. I think part of that is making sure that folks are on the same page for next year. But this is Philadelphia. Things go south quite frequently. I think that part of this is making sure that folks know that that elections they matter.
They matter.
They matter. They have consequences. So I think that this issue around the ward leaders and trying to punish ward leaders and committee members that do things that are not consistent with the party is I don't know. I mean, it's a little bravado,
It sure is. It sure is. So what happened exactly in this blue tsunami, I think there's a combination of things. You got the Trump effect. You got the demographic changes. You have charismatic leaders, candidates that are running. I tell you what, Democrats are putting up good candidates. And that matters, when you have good and females. Right. We're seeing a lot of females getting elected into these high profile positions.
Right.
And I think that's excellent. In Delaware County, the party, they ran strong candidates whose message resonated with the voters. Demographic changes in Delaware County, which over the years we have seen an influx of Philadelphians who've moved out of the city because of increased cost of living here in the city of Philadelphia.
Exactly.
And they have, they have gone to these counties. And so there's a demographic shift in those counties. And I think that can also be part of it. In Chester County, although Republicans, they still outnumber the Democrats voters in Chester County. They tend to vote along the ideological lines, so they don't see Republican or Democrat, they see the candidate.
Exactly.
So we've seen that change there. Regardless of party, even though they don't like what they see at the national level, they are going to be more open to the ideas of an opposing party at the local level. So that's the difference there. And that's why I'm a little skeptic. I'm a little concerned about this national stuff, Aisha. And we'll get to that in a minute. I'm very concerned about that. Right. It's not 100% that people went with the intention of kicking Trump between the legs. I don't think that was the intention.
No, I don't think so either. But I do think that people are tired of the status quo.
Yeah.
And I think that people are feeling like, that their income is getting squeezed and that they want to be able to have better outcomes for their children.
Yeah, they want better results for their children.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. I don't think this is a nail in the coffin for President Donald Trump by any means.
No,
okay,
I don't,
we got to be very careful with this.
Yes, we do.
I think he could still win Pennsylvania. That's my opinion. We can differ on that.
I agree. I agree.
And I think a lot of it will come down to who is running against him. I think that's going to be very paramount. We're going to talk. Listen, I'm going to be honest with you. I know that Elizabeth Warren, she's raising a lot of money. She has a message that's resonating with a lot of millennials and young voters. I know this. But I don't think Elizabeth Warren will beat Donald Trump. I don't see that happening. I don't see that happening. That's my personal opinion. People can differ with that. Bernie Sanders, let's talk about that. Bernie Sanders, I think, we need... I don't know, Aisha. I'm a little nervous about this.
I mean, I think that it's. I think that the national politics are fraught with identity politics as well. And so, while I would jump on the Warren bandwagon and I would get out there and knock on doors the same way I did for Obama. I didn't do that for Hillary Clinton because Hillary Clinton didn't have the ground game. And I think the difference in Pennsylvania is your ground game. And one of the things that proved that was a difference was the staffing up of the local chapters of the Democratic Party in the counties. And that was the difference between whether or not the fact that you can drive 200 miles away from Philadelphia and you won't find a Republican-controlled county. And that is incredible. And so, but we still have this pocket. We have this pocket of blue, and in the rest of the state, we have this red. And so the whoever comes in on the national politics has to be able to talk to the red folks too and say, hey, we're going to make change for the betterment of your family.
Yeah, and I hope that we have an opportunity here. The Democrats have an opportunity on a national level to do a sweep.
Yeah.
It all depends on the message. It all depends on the candidate because we have the ability to win and win big. But once again, we go to this issue of who's going to be the candidate
Right.
that's going to go up against Donald Trump. Right now, if you look at the Iowa caucuses and you look at the percentages, the top three, Biden is at in number 3 or number 4. And we all know historically, whoever wins Iowa wins the nomination.
Did Trump win Iowa?
I don't believe I don't know. I'm not sure. We can look that up, Dylan. You can look that up for us so we can give accurate information here.
Yeah, but my point is that folks will tell you one thing and do something else when they get into the
Well,
polls.
remember that the Iowa caucuses is a ground strategy.
Yeah.
You're having that personal touch and contact with people.
Exactly.
It's a tradition that's been held for a long time there, where you're not going to a voting booth. You're actually talking to voters, and they get into a room and then they move and they switch. If you want to vote for your candidate, you're physically moving your body to go to one camp or another. This is how they do it in Iowa.
Yeah, right.
And that can be a little trickier. But let's see what happens. Let's see what's going to be the outcome. Who's going to be the candidate? I do like Biden. A lot of people are too concerned about Biden. I think Trump is a little intimidated by Biden because he is a forthcoming dude. He'll tell you how he feels. He's a different animal that he's dealing with. So let's see what happens on that front. Interest in Scranton, PA, Aissia, we had for the first time an independent candidate, female.
Mm-hmm.
Her name is Paige Cognetti. She won for the first time. She's the new mayor of Scranton, and she's pregnant. She's due in December to have her baby.
I did not know that. Wow.
Yeah. So she won that contest, and the party, she says she didn't trust the party. She was elected mayor. She ran on her own. Independently. She's the first female to win as mayor in Scranton, and the first mayor-elect to give birth in December. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, that is interesting.
I think maybe that kind of weighed a lot on what voters' mind.
Again, so I want to go right back to the whether or not Warren or whether or not Biden, whether or not this is a male, this is a gender issue, and. With the women's marches right after Donald Trump's inauguration, and they're being consistent, right after the inauguration and every year since, like millions of women have came out and said, there's something wrong with this person. There's something wrong with his policies, and you know what? There's something wrong with institutionalizing abuse against women. Yeah. And I think that's why the Me Too movement, really took hold. I think that there was a backlash against this domination which suppressed women. Yeah. And so I did do the research on the Iowa caucus, and it was Ted Cruz.
Ted Cruz who won that. There you go. Yeah,
Ted
Remember,
Cruz. It was Ted Cruz
who won that.
So all I'm saying is that when people's values are lifted up, then they go into the polling places based on their values, which is I think why folks gave Trump a chance, even folks who and they were women. Yeah, they were women who gave Trump the chance, but then. And sometimes, I think that we don't trust ourselves. We vote against our best interests, right? Mm-hmm. And so once all of this stuff came out about his inability to be able to be a president that can, uplift the country, then women said, "Oh, wait, I want a do-over," right? So maybe, just maybe, Warren will surprise us, and maybe folks going into the voting booth will surprise us as well. I don't know. Yeah.
I'm just a little concerned with her health care plan, and I'll be honest with you. Yeah. It's costing in the trillion of dollars. We have a national debt here. I don't like when you overpromise and then you have to underdeliver. Yeah. And that becomes a very interesting dynamic because politicians have a tendency to overpromise so many things and then they can't deliver on that. I'm not saying that she's going to do that, but what I'm saying that her plan seems to be a little out of reach and far-fetched here. I don't think we're going to have the ability to have the health insurance and the health plan that she is pushing. Right. Aissia, let's be realistic with this. That's never going to happen when you have a two-party party system in Congress. You have
Yeah.
Republicans and they control the House, but they don't control the Senate.
Well-
and ultimately, it has to go to a vote in the Senate for anything to get through. And you know
Exactly.
that, and I know that.
So here's the thing, and just let this marinate.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a boomerang. Maybe it's a boomerang to fix Obamacare.
Yeah.
You know that sometimes your end game isn't what you are pushing forward.
Right.
Sometimes the end game is the tension that gets you what you really want. I'm just putting it out there.
Well, you're right. But here's the other thing that I want a candidate that's honest and that's real and that's transparent. You can't have this message like Bernie Sanders is having. Look, listen, I respect the guy. I respect his ideology and what he says. A lot of the stuff that he says is true. We got to agree with him. But this country will never have free tuition for kids. That's never going to happen in this country. That is not something that's going to happen. That's a good hype. That's a good message, but it's not going to happen, Aisha.
Yeah.
And we have to be real about this thing. Healthcare is another issue that we've been battling since Obama, or even before Obama, for decades.
Yeah.
And we've never been able to get that right. And so I don't know. I think we have to take a short break.
Yeah.
I think we're just right about to take this short break. You're listening to Voices of Change on Usula Radio with your host, Aissia Richardson and Leslie Acosta. We'll be right back.
What do you think you're doing, Kevin?
Was just gonna drive home.
There are several warning signs present that you shouldn't be driving.
Like hearing voices?
Like your text to emoji ratio?
Oh man, the selfies.
Selfie. Nailed it.
We all have warning signs that let us know that we're probably not okay to drive. Mine is pretending to be your subconscious.
Craig, come on man, let's split a ride home.
Sometimes the things we do or say can make others feel hurt, excluded, or isolated. Everything you say and do creates an impact.
How am I supposed to save the whole world?
You can't think about saving the world. You have to think about saving one person.
Because of you, someone's entire life can change. You don't have to be a superhero to have a positive impact.
Friends?
Friends.
Welcome back. You're listening to Voices of Change on Usula Radio with your hosts, Aissia Richardson and Leslie Acosta. We were talking about, and we are having this conversation about the blue tsunami of November the 5th that occurred not only here locally in our local politics, but it also had an effect nationally. We see the win in Georgia, was it, Aisha, and in Virginia.
Virginia and Kentucky.
In Kentucky, I'm sorry. We got that in Kentucky and Virginia. We see the wins there in the governorship and also the control of the House, in complete control of the House in Virginia. But let's talk a little bit about this Working Families Party movement, Aisha. This party was founded in 1998, and it was founded in New York City. And they have active chapters throughout the United States. And so we see, for instance, you have chapters in Connecticut, in Oregon, in New Jersey, in Maryland, in Washington, D.C. You have them in Pennsylvania, in Wisconsin, Nevada, West Virginia, New Mexico, Ohio, Texas, and Illinois. So this Working Families Party, they're spreading and they're expanding throughout the United States. And they first organized in 1998 by a coalition of labor unions, right, and community organizations, members of the non-inactive National New Party, and a variety of advocacy groups that came together to form this organization. And we see a candidate here in Philadelphia by the name of Kendra Brooks, who won under this party system and has an at-large city council seat. She was funded by Philly 3.0 and a local progressive a local progressive party that she raised about $250,000. She raised
a lot of money.
She outraised a lot of the city council people that were running. There was that one pastor that also ran.
Nicholas O'Rourke.
Right, he
Yeah.
ran. She and a pastor. She beat him, and she also beat Al, who was the Republican who held that seat. So the Working Families Party seems to be aggressively putting themselves out there and putting candidates out there and funding them heavily to win these seats. And so we saw that here in the city of Philadelphia, Aisha. We saw that win here with Kendra Brooks. They have been able to show and prove that they're viable, that they have money, and that they're going to put candidates that can take that message to the people and to the voters, and that seems to be resonating with the voters.
Yeah, I mean, I think that part of the backing for Kendra Brooks also came from one of the low wage workers union, and that was 32 BJSEIU. They spent $171,000 on her candidacy. So I think that part of that is making sure that the unions who are low wage workers are able to have the same kind of political muscle as the higher wage workers, like the electrical workers and the carpenters workers. So SEIU folks make about $23 an hour, but with electrical union they can make $60 an hour. I mean their income is like really high, which means that they can afford more in union dues.
Yeah, and those those unions, for instance, the electrical unions, we don't see a lot of minorities. We don't see people of color in those unions.
There you go.
And that's an issue. I mean, you have a party union boss, a heavyweight like Doherty, who's under a cloud right now. But his union, let's go to unions like Ashdale, the painters union. Where are these minorities? Where are people of color in the part of these unions,
right,
or workers or people that work for these unions? We don't see that,
right.
And yet they control a lot of our politics and people that run for office. They put candidates up to run for office.
They do.
And we don't see a lot of minorities and people of color in these unions, Aisha. That's a major problem here in Philadelphia, when 46% of the population is African American.
Yeah.
And Hispanics here. And we don't have these people in these unions. And I know you're trying to be careful with that, but that's a reality.
Well, I know that. I mean, it is a reality. I mean, I think that one of the things that came out in the paper today, like this week, was that the city exceeded its minority participation rate in contracting. But it's still a small percentage of what the city actually has available for contracting, and it doesn't include all the municipal buildings. That are going up. So, I used to count the number of women and minorities on construction jobs just as a general practice. I would go by and I would see, where is that license plate? Oh, that license plate is from New Jersey. That license plate is, of the workers, is from Delaware, right? So, if my Pennsylvania money is going to a project in Pennsylvania, then I want that money to be generated back in Pennsylvania.
That's right.
So it really is not. It's a local issue as well as a minority and women issue too. So we do need to get more folks into these unions that are making $60 an hour. $60 an hour. That is that's the ability to put your kid through college, right?
Yeah.
So I think that with this win for Kendra Brooks, it's also a statement to the unions as well, that the little guys can play when we consolidate our resources.
When you consolidate your efforts and you get voters on the same page to say, look, enough is enough, let's unite, and let's send a message.
Exactly. And so I think that part of this win with Kendra Brooks is also pushing the Democratic Party, their values, closer to the left too. So maybe we won't get free college for all, but maybe we'll get reduce rates for state colleges.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll get free community college. Maybe we'll figure out a way to be able to get the things that we need to be able to, improve our economic outcomes for ourselves and our children. So this issue around the unions and who the unions are backing and who's winning and who's losing, I think is an important discussion that I'm sure is having on the union table, because really this is all about who's at the table, right? Who's at the table. And so when somebody is being backed by John Doherty, he's at the table. Yeah. So now you have Kendra Brooks and you have low-wage workers at the table, and those voices will be heard in city council as well. So I don't think that that's such a bad thing, especially when the majority of the party are poor people.
Yeah, well, exactly right. Exactly right. Let's talk a little bit now in the future, Aissia. We're going to have a mayor's race in the city of Philadelphia. Coming up soon.
Yeah.
And I know we're getting ahead of ourselves, but that's a reality that's coming.
It is.
It's there, and it's going to be here sooner than what we think. I have predictions here of certain candidates that I think are going to run.
Okay.
They haven't made any confirmation as to that they're going to do this, but I think they will. I think we have 3 top tiers people here. We have Maria Quinones Sanchez, who's eyeing that position.
Yeah.
We also have she's a councilwoman. Helen Gem is on that, but I think Helen Gem might do the congressional seat. Not sure yet. She's eyeing that congressional seat. She's probably saying for mayor, but I think her passion is to run against Dwight Evans in that congressional seat. We also have Sherelle Parker, that's looking to become the first Black female mayor in the city of Philadelphia.
Right.
I think she's going to have the backing of Mayor Kenny for that.
She definitely will.
Yeah, there's some chatter that Mayor Kenny wants to run for governor.
That's not going to happen.
And if he does, listen, he's going to waste his time. He's going to waste his money.
Does he even like being mayor?
I don't even, right. So I don't know. So they're saying that all these dynamics are happening here in the city of Philadelphia. It's going to be interesting to see how that dynamic plays out, right? Because you have a Latina woman running. You're going to have a Sherelle Parker. You're going to have an Asian one. So you have 3 women of color running in those positions.
Yeah.
And that dynamic is going to be very, very interesting to watch.
And I think that, as we always say, that the politics is really a chess game, right?
It is a chess game.
It's about how the pieces on the board are moving around, and sometimes your move can cause a different reaction, right, from your opponent or from just based on what you have on the chessboard. So I personally think that Sherelle Parker may be saying she's running for mayor, but she wants to be president of city council. Maybe.
Well,
so
right.
and with Maria, she really needs to reach out more broadly to other women across the city, particularly African American women, to be able to coalesce, to do a coalition of support. And with Helen, time will tell. With Helen, I think that this victory for Kendra Brooks, I actually think it's a one-off, to tell you the truth. I really think it's a one-off. I think that we also have Chris Rabb, who's really supporting and on the Democratic side, but part of the issue is how effective can these folks be in terms of pushing policy?
How effective, right? And that, at the end of the day, policy is the most important thing.
It really is,
because you can't move anything.
Nope.
In politics, if you don't have policy if you don't effectuate change with policy, you know that, and I know that. That is such a major piece of doing anything constructive as a politician.
Yeah.
You can be in the seat 10 years, 40, but if you don't effectuate change with policy, you will not have a successful record.
Right.
You will just be a person there, a face of the party, holding that seat, but not having any impact in what you're doing. So policy, locally, we know Maria has done a lot of things at the local level where she has effectuated change through her policies that she has initiated.
Exactly.
Maria has positioned herself very in very important positions. She has positioned herself to effectuate change, and she has proven herself to be a winner.
Yeah.
Without the party support,
Exactly.
without having her, she's done it on her own. She has been able to show not only to the party, but she has been able to show to the party that she is a woman of strength,
Right.
and that she's not going to go with the status quo. She's going to shake up the status quo,
Right.
whether you like it or not.
Right.
Love her or hate her, she has proven herself to be such.
Exactly.
But at the end of the day, policy is a very important piece. You're going to be anyone that runs as for mayor or as a state rep or any position locally or statewide, you're going to have to show, or you're going to have to prove, what have you done on the policy front to effectuate change. And voters are looking for that.
Right.
And if you can't prove that you've been able to be effective in your position as a leader, there's going to be change.
Right.
People are going to vote you out of office.
Right.
And people are going to put people in there that are going to do what they say they're going to do.
And this is a numbers game too. So if you look at the numbers from Chris Rabb, you look at the numbers from Helen, there's maybe about 205,000 people who voted for them, right? So, you have those numbers have to be consolidated. We have 1.5 million people in Philadelphia. Do your numbers gel?
Yeah, exactly right. Well, we're going to take a short break. You're listening to Voices of Change on Usala Radio with your hosts, Aissia Richardson and Leslie Acosta. We'll be right back.
They call me Maxie, but I prefer tripod. I was your above-average four-legged homie, and then wham, bam, minivan. Some people pity me. Now that's lame. I still run, fetch, and swim. And the ladies love me. I'm the ultimate wingman. Just don't ask me to high five.
If you love them enough to suck the snot out of their nose at 4 a.m., then surely you'll check nhtsa.gov/the right seat to make sure they're in the right car seat.
Welcome back. You are listening to Voices of Change on Usala Radio with your hosts, Aissia Richardson and Leslie Acosta. Aissia, the blue wave, the blue tsunami is here.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be here to stay for a while.
I think it is too. I mean, I think that, you and I, in the break, we were talking about this issue of policy and pushing for a policy. And so we need, right now in the Senate, we have 22 senators. We need 3 more seats. To take it, right? Because then we'll get the majority with the lieutenant governor voting in favor of the Democrats, right?
Well, there's a seat, a Republican seat that's held by Thomas Killian. He's a senator, and with this, he's been serving the 9th senatorial district in Pennsylvania, which includes parts of Chester County. It also includes Delaware County. And so he won a special election in 2016, which means out of the 3 that you're saying that we need to flip to a Democrat, that's one of them.
Right.
And he only won by 3% of the vote.
Right.
The last time he won the special election. So this guy must be shaking in his boots.
I'm sure. I'm sure he is.
Yes,
he
yes.
should be.
He should be, huh? So, to your point, yes, if we can flip 2 more seats,
right.
I think we're going to win that seat if they get a viable candidate and flip. And that's important. Why, Aissia? Why is it important to flip that Senate seat?
Because we've had, in the last month, 10 children under 17, 2-year-olds shot in the head.
There you go.
Shot in the head.
Right. And Republicans refuse to do anything.
Refuse to do anything on red flag laws that would get guns out of the hands of the mentally ill, would refuse to bring the reporting of lost and stolen guns statewide. We have it here in Philadelphia. the DA just recently said that he would start enforcing it. It needs to be enforced. We have these weapons that are cop killers killing children.
Yeah.
So this is why policy matters, and this is why this blue tsunami across the country is so important, because our kids are dying.
Yeah.
Every day. Yeah. Every day in the United States, there's a mass shooting.
There was one in California again.
In Calabasas. Was it Calabasas or Santa Clara? Santa Clara.
Where two people were shot, a lot of people injured. In a school.
So, So this is why this blue tsunami is so important, because and on a national level, McConnell is not bringing anything onto the Senate floor to be voted on. 300 bills that the House has put forward, none of them is being brought forward on the Senate side. The only thing that McConnell is doing is approving right-wing judges.
Yeah. Well, and remember something, Aissia, that even in Harrisburg, and I'm talking not only Republicans but Democrats, even our own leadership, our own Democratic leadership in Harrisburg, these people are embedded with the NRA. They give a lot of money to these politicians, and they control and dictate what policies, what legislations are being put for or brought up for votes. And so that plays a heavy, heavy hand on how we push legislation and laws forward, not only here in Pennsylvania, here in Philadelphia, but across this nation. And that's an issue.
It is an issue.
It's an issue when you have your own party leadership in Harrisburg, and I can tell you this firsthand knowledge, where they take money from the NRA and these conservative groups that are against reforming any of our laws when it comes to gun laws. And that's an issue. I mean, kids are being killed here. And there's inaction in Harrisburg. There's inaction at Congress to do anything about this. This has to change. Exactly. This has to change. We have 26 state reps here in the city of Philadelphia representing us, but their hands are tied.
Yeah.
They don't have any power because the Senate is controlled by the Republicans. Right. The House is controlled by the Republicans. I don't know how that's going to play out when these folks go up for re-election right now. What's the, I forgot the count, Aissia. How many Democrats now to Republicans in the House in Harrisburg?
I think we have 203 House seats. I think we maybe have 93. We did pick up a bunch of seats in the midterm elections. So it's getting there. I mean, I think. So
I think with the redistricting, maybe that's going to change the landscape.
I think with the redistricting, it's going to change. And also, I think on the House side, I think we need to pick up 7 seats.
On the House side to take control.
I think it's 7 seats.
Yeah.
So when you look at the numbers, it's not that many, but you're right in terms of how the party does fundraising and making sure that there's fundraising that's in place to replace that NRA money so that we can make sure and take that stranglehold away from our politics, because we're dying here in Philadelphia, and we're dying in Pittsburgh, and we're dying across the state. The other thing that I think is so awful is that the rate of suicide is also increasing. And so guns in the hands of people who have mental health issues is the suicide rate. So we're dying of suicides in the middle of the states, right? So this issue, gun violence isn't just about Philadelphia, violence or drug violence. It's about suicides as well. So once we are able to pool our resources again and replace that NRA money so that the NRA can get out of other people's pockets, then we can maybe get some solid legislation through.
And the other piece to that is the money that they give to these politicians. But it also depends on where that politician lives. For instance, if you are a Democrat and you live in the middle of the state, you're going to vote very conservatively. Right. And we see that over and over again. I mean, I've witnessed that when I was in Harrisburg, where you had folks from your own party vote on bills and legislations that will hurt our Democratic Party. Where in Philadelphia, of course, you're going to vote against it. Where if you go to the middle of Pennsylvania, they're going to vote they're going to lean more conservative and more Republican.
Right.
So that also has a huge impact of where you're actually situated and where you're elected. That also has an impact on how you vote. And I'll give you a perfect example. In the impeachment proceedings, 2 Democrats voted not to impeach Donald Trump.
Exactly.
Right? One was from Minnesota.
Right.
And I don't know, the other one was, and they voted not to impeach.
Yeah,
and they're Democrats.
Right.
So, that's the dynamics also in play.
Right.
When you're taking these votes on one way or another. But I'll tell you what, something has to give here. Killings here in the city of Philadelphia is rampant. We have not decreased the numbers. In fact, they have increased.
Right.
Something has to give here, Aisha. This is a democratic city.
Right.
And for us not to be able to do certain things to control or at least decrease or minimize, something is obviously wrong with our political system here if we're not able to do something about that.
Well, and let's go back to the mayor's race. I think that the winning candidate will have a strategy. I
hope so.
Yeah.
I'm tired of hearing, we're going to do the. Mayor Kenny came with the idea that he was going to do all these things. He was going to be a reformer. The stop and frisk issue, that was one of his main platforms that he was going to address, and he never did any of that stuff. And I'm not trying to be, we don't want to attack people here, but we got to talk. We got to speak truth to power here. If you promise something, you have to deliver on your promise.
Right.
Say what you mean and mean what you say, and do right by the people.
Right. And I mean, I think the legislature has poured millions of dollars into the Pennsylvania Crime and Delinquency Commission, Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency, PCCD. Millions and millions of dollars. Some of it went into the schools. Some of it has gone to support, community-based crime programs, or crime prevention programs, and violence prevention programs. So. It's not a money issue, though, Les. It's not a money issue.
But that's the other issue that you're talking about, these prevention programs and resources that are going into these prevention programs.
Yeah.
We have 26 of them here in the city of Philadelphia.
Yeah.
26 prevention crime
right.
Agencies that are in majority are nonprofit organizations.
Right.
A lot of money are being pumped into these organizations, right. And we're not seeing a decrease in the gun violence and in the crime.
It's not.
So we gotta rethink what we're doing here.
Right. And so I think the Movita Johnson Harrell really talks about this deterrence issue, the deterrence the programs that were really effective in addressing what was going on with shooters, right? With those folks who were the shooters, and getting those folks the support services and the wraparound services that they needed to get out of the game, right? So I think focused deterrents are the key, but it's again a policy issue,
right? And how do we get that policy? How do we get folks on both sides of the aisle to vote?
We have to go out and vote.
Right. And that's the only way we're going to change, because if there's a stalemate like we have currently at the state level, we're not going to get any policy change. And that is so important, because if we can't get policy to change in favor of these issues, we're not going to move the needle in these areas.
Right.
So, Aisha, this conversation has been great. We will see you guys back here next Saturday, and you have a great day. Aisha, thank you. This blue tsunami, Aisha, we made history. Let's keep it going.
Did. Yes,
See you next week.